And there we are. So hello everyone and welcome to Teacher Webinar number 2, Building a Student Agency. And today's webinar is brought to you by Teach Man to Fish. We are an educational charity based in the United Kingdom, whose mission is to empower young people with the skills they need to succeed in school, work, and life. I'm not going to go into too much detail right now, because you'll have plenty of opportunities to find out more about our work and our programs throughout the session today. So this webinar is the second part of a new webinar series on setting students up for success. So if you enjoyed today's webinar, make sure that you join us for webinar 3 on developing empathy and understanding the needs of your community. This will take place at 4 p.m. British Summer Time on Tuesday, 29th of June, and again at 2 p.m. British Summer Time on Thursday, 1st of July. That will mean in 2 weeks' time, we'll meet again so you can join us for webinar 3. So before we start, we'd like to share some ground rules for today's webinar. You'll notice, and hopefully that's the case, that most of you are on mute at the moment. And if you are not, please check, and we thank you if you can mute yourself. And that's because we have a big number of people joining today. So we cannot all speak at the same time and at the same, and there might be some feedback as well. I was going to say at the same time, oh, sorry, going too fast at the moment. There might be some background noise that can interrupt the session. So please make sure that you are on mute, but you're welcome to unmute yourself and share your video, because we'll be asking questions throughout the session, which you are welcome to interact in the chat box or by unmuting or raising your hand. And then with India, we'll be keeping an eye on the participant list. And if you'd like to share something, please feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself, and then we'll get a moment to share your thoughts and insights together. So that's mainly for the rules in terms of today's session. A little bit about me. Some of you might know me already. My name is Paula, and I'm part of the Teach Man to Fish team. And I've been working on our wonderful School Enterprise Challenge program for the last 8 years. And the School Enterprise Challenge gives young people the chance to become entrepreneurs while still at school, because they plan, set up, and run a real business. And in the process, they learn not only about businesses, but they also develop a wide range of life skills, such as communication, teamwork, problem solving, and leadership. So as we get started, we love to know where you're joining from and to get to know you better. So please continue sharing your name, school, and country in the chat box. And we are going to allow a few more minutes to do that. And if you have done so already, we are going to go with something different. So we like to know, what's your favorite thing about being a teacher? What is it that you love most about being a teacher? So feel free to share on the chat, and I'm going to have a look at it so we know who's joining us today. Let's have a look. Shradha from Delhi Public School, Varanasi. Sri Lanka, working at Tea Leaf Vision. Amazing. Thank you, Karima, for sharing to be around little toddlers. I love kids, interacting with the students. You love kids. I love your answers. Thank you so much for interacting in the chat. Smile on faces of my students. Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. You might have noticed on the video is also my colleague, India. India, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Hi, everyone. I'm India. I am part of the Global Programs team. I'm based in the UK, and I manage the Global School Enterprise Challenge program.
Amazing. Thank you, India. And because you said you are based in the UK, I'm going to say I'm actually based in South Africa at the moment. So we welcome all the South African teachers as well, and everyone joining us from South Africa. Great, so thank you everyone, and don't worry, because there'll be plenty of opportunities to continue interacting with your peers and in the chat box on today's sessions. So let's get started and have a look at what we'll be covering today. So the duration of this webinar will be up to 1.5 hours. As I said before, so much content today to cover that hopefully will make it within the 1.5 hours that we have available for today. So let's have a look at the objectives for the session. We are mainly running this webinar to introduce the concept of agency as an essential life skill for young people to develop. We also would like to explore together the benefits of empowering students to manage their own learning. It's all about the student agency and students managing their own learning. We would also like to discuss how the role of a teacher needs to change in order to empower or make a space for students to develop agency and take ownership of their learning. And we will also like to continue setting the scene for the whole webinar series, which is all about setting students up for success. So the rest of the webinars in this series will be all about how you can put into practice what we have covered on webinar 1, which was Introduction to Entrepreneurial and Growth Mindset, and on today's webinars, which is about building student agency through our experiential learning program, the School Enterprise Challenge. So make sure that you make a space in your busy calendars to join us on the upcoming 7 webinars of this series. At the end of this webinar, I will share with you a link to a survey. And when you complete the survey, after the webinar, you'll be able to download a certificate of attendance. I will also share the presentation slides and a list of useful resources with you by email after today's webinar, so you don't need to worry about writing things down. So you might need to write key ideas on your breakout sessions. So let's get started. And before doing that, we want to begin by asking you to think about this question. What do you think are the advantages of equipping students with the skills to manage their own learning? Why do you think it might be beneficial for students to be able to take charge of their own learning? So we are going to give you a few minutes so you think about your answer. Why is it important, and what are the advantages of equipping students with the skills to manage their own learning? Please do share your answers in the chat box, and we would like to invite one or two of you to share your insights as well. While you get thinking, we'll kick off with one benefit that we want to share with you today. We believe that when students take control of their own learning, they feel more invested and motivated to learn because they are in control and not just doing what they are told to be doing. What other advantages can you think of? And as we said before, let's have a look at the chat. Empowering them, that it promotes independence, to become more confident to face challenges, bring that sharing, to make them ready to tackle any situation independently. Says Ritu. Confidence, know the value of money, says Poonam. To make learning permanent. Shanta is sharing. We inspire them to be responsible for the learning. Amazing. Thank you for sharing your insights on the advantages of equipping students with the skills of the manager learning. Students learn leadership skills at an early stage, to practice what they have learned, to explore ideas and strengths that reinforce the skill attained. Amazing. The overall development of the child, says Venkata. Amazing, thank you very much. It's about learning autonomy. Thank you for sharing. Learning by doing, Sasima, capital letters, a big one, learning by doing. Improvement in their communication skills. Great, thank you. It does sound like there are many, many benefits in terms of equipping students. So we think that actually through your answers, you actually help us to define what agency is. So let's have a look at a common understanding on a definition that we like to bring as a core on today's session. For us, to put simply, agency is the ability to manage your own learning. And imagine how powerful that could be then when you think about agency in the context of students learning. Because when students have agency, it means that they are fueled by their intrinsic curiosity and motivation. Their thirst to learn more and do better. So when students are empowered to manage their own learning, it means you as a teacher can take a step back to guide, inspire, and encourage your students while letting them take ownership of their own learning journey. So we understand that for some of you, this might seem like quite a shift, and I'm not saying that this is going to change overnight, but you kind of show us on your answers that it's so important for students to have agency if we want to support them to fulfill their potential. So now we are going to do short exercise all together. Probably this is the first time that we do something like that at Teach Man to Fish. So we invite you to follow us, follow the flow on this exercise and see where that will take us. Because this is going to be a visualization, a short visualization exercise. Just to take a moment together to reflect and get connected to this new idea of developing the agency in our students. So I'm going to read something to you, and you'll work individually on the questions that I will share with you. You can keep your camera on or off, your mic definitely off if you can. So let me check before we jump into the exercise. Are you all up for that? Thumbs up, down, yes is on the chat. Are we all up for a short visualization exercise together? It'll be a guided exercise to connect, pause, and think about what we mean by this new idea of a student agency. Let me check. Yes, 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 yes. Amazing. Amazing. So let's get started then. As I said before, this visualization exercise will help you connect with the idea of stepping back so your students can manage their own learning. So think about a student or a group of students you have taught who demonstrated agency. It might be where they had the opportunity to pick their own learning goals or tailor learning to their interests or decide how to approach a problem. So we are going to start by sitting upright in a comfortable position, and you can see I'll be doing the same. We are going to make sure that our feet touch the ground, and we are going to take a deep breath in through our nose and out through our mouth. And we are going to do that 3 times. If you are into yoga, meditation, and pausing for a moment during the day, that's what we like to do today. Just take a deep breath in through your nose and full breath out through your mouth. And we'll do the same one more time. Letting it go. So when you are ready, I will invite you to close your eyes. So thinking about the student or the group of students who demonstrated agency, come back to the time you taught them something. What did that look like? What were they doing that made you think they were owning their learning? How were they acting? And what were they thinking? What were you doing? Now look closer at the moment. What was it about your lesson or activity or teaching that contributed to this? Get connected with this at that specific moment. And now that you are present to that time in the past, leave that memory behind and take it into the future. You are now supporting your students to think for themselves in the future. So what are you doing to facilitate this? What are you doing to encourage your students to develop their intrinsic motivation and curiosity? And what is it that they are doing to manage their own learning? How are you helping them do that? Are you maybe asking them questions? Or perhaps you are playing games before the start of your lessons to ignite their curiosity? Or maybe before the end of your lesson, you are asking them questions to reflect on their learning. You can now make a decision who you are and how you want to feel moving forward. You can reinvent and recreate your role as a teacher, because you get to choose what kind of teacher you want to be. What do you want to do? When you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes. And if there's anything that you like to write down that came up for you, that you like to come back to in your own time, you're welcome to take a few notes. Or if there's anything that you like to share that came up for you when you connected with this new idea, either on the chat or if you like to unmute yourself and share, please let us know. And if not, that's completely fine. Just take your time. Would anybody like to share what came up for them? You can write it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. No? Okay. As I said before, that's fine. We leave it to you to come back to in your own time. But mainly what we wanted to do is connect with this idea of when it happened before, what was happening and what made it look like we were developing the agency, and how we can replicate that into the future. How can we change our role as teachers to see more of that and encourage our students to own their own learning? Great, so thank you everyone for taking part. Again, as I said before, this is the first time we do something like this. So we hope you enjoy it. And again, it's for you. So you can always come back to that. So now that we are connected to this idea of students managing their own learning, I'm going to break you up into small groups so that you can have a discussion in smaller groups with your own peers. So in a moment, we are going to split you into breakout rooms in groups of 8, and you'll have 10 minutes to do the following activity. But before we introduce the activity, let's quickly recap on how breakout rooms work. So you will be assigned to a breakout room and move there automatically. You don't need to worry about anything. At the end of the activity, you will be automatically moved back to this main session. In the breakout room, remember to click the microphone and the camera if you like to have them on. Definitely the mic, not the camera is optional. So you can get to interact with your peers. And we like you to remember that you'll get out of this webinar only what you put in. So we really, really encourage you to actively get involved and be part of a conversation with your peers. This is a safe space and there's no right or wrong answers. It's just a great opportunity to connect with other teachers, share your experiences and ideas. That's it. If you need any assistance in the breakout room, you can always click ask for help and then invite the host. But please only click this option if you need help, because otherwise we'll be jumping in and interrupting your conversation. And that's not something that we like to be doing. So only click that option if you really need us to go and troubleshoot anything on your breakout room. Great, so now that we recap on how things work, let's have a look at the activity. So we said you'll have 10 minutes and we'd like you to pick one of these two questions. The first one is, if all of your students are managing their own learning, how does that change your role as a teacher? So we would like you to write down at least 3 main points. How would your role as a teacher, change if your students are managing their own learning? The other topic that you can think about and discuss together is about thinking and writing down at least 3 effective techniques that can help students manage their own learning. The first one is about thinking about your role as a teacher and coming up with 3 main points. The second one is about thinking about 3 effective techniques that can help students manage their own learning. Remember that you'll have 10 minutes for this discussion and to come up with your answers. So please only spend a minute at the beginning deciding which of the 2 questions you would prefer to answer. Only 1 minute, otherwise all your time will go trying to decide on one of the questions. So once we bring you back to the main room, we'll invite you to share the insights and ideas which came out of your discussion. So make sure that you nominate somebody in the group to be ready to take notes. If you attended webinar 1, we put it all in a Google document and we'll share all the insights from all the groups. So please make sure that one of you in the breakout room is the note taker so that you can share your insights when you're back. Great, are we all ready to rock and roll in the breakout rooms? Yeah, let me quickly do the math, thinking about how many participants we have. We say it'll be 8, so we are going to have 9 breakout rooms, and I'm going to give you 10 minutes, and you'll be assigned automatically, and there we go. If we are ready to go, I'll see you back in 10 minutes. Bye. Amazing. So welcome back, everyone. And I hope you enjoyed that time to share ideas in smaller groups and with your peers. So now we'll take a few minutes to share all together what you came up with. So we are going to ask you if you please note takers, if you can please bring your 3 main points or your 3 main techniques from your group discussion in the chat, and make sure to mention which of the 2 questions you chose and which group number you are. So then we can bring it all together on this document, which India will kindly put together based on your sharings. So if you don't mind, if you could please bring your 3 main points or 3 main techniques in the chat so we can get to learn from each other. Thank you, Shanta. I can see teacher's role as a facilitator, monitor and instant feedback provider, friendly and easygoing. Thank you, Brenda, from sharing the feedback. Room 2, Wendy says, it was the first question about the 3 main points on the role of a teacher. You facilitate the framework and ground rules, helping kids to set goals and action plans, help with clarity and doubts, be supportive with active listening and open-ended questions, help uncover and explore options that are available for learning, provide guidance and feedback for support. Amazing, thank you. Team 4 as well. Does anybody would like to share it, unmuting yourself and share it with everyone?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yes.
This is Mukti Pandey from GPS Varanasi. And all right, I just wanted to, we had a group of 8 participants. We took first question. That if the students are managing their own learning, how does that change your role as a teacher? I think that yes, there are many roles. A teacher has to now play many roles. First is you become a facilitator. Then second thing, guide and mentor. Of course, you're always. But what one of the participants in our group said, that you become as a parent for them also, and it's very important for the teachers to handhold these children. So it is like, it is like that the teacher is walking behind the child, and the children are moving in the front, so that basically learning by leading is being done by the children themselves. And wherever our teacher feels that yes, something is going wrong, can always tell with that, yes, with your experience you have come to this, can you just give it a try? So you are just giving more opportunity to the student to explore, so that he can learn from his own experiments. So that is what the role of a teacher becomes. It is not about a teacher role entirely becomes flipped. Basically it becomes a student centered learning. It doesn't from a teacher centered learning, it becomes to a student centered learning. So these are the main 3 points.
That's amazing. Thank you.
The second question.
Thank
May
you.
I?
Yeah, just let me say thank you very much for sharing that. I think those were really interesting points, and we'll come back to them. So thank you very much. Yes, anyone who'd like to share the number 2, question number 2?
Yes, I would like to share. Okay, question number 2, yes. Hello and namaste. My name is Gita Gurung and I am from Nepal. So I was in room number 6.
Yes.
And there were me, myself, and Garima Garg, Dinanath Jagtap, Rita Datta, Richa Arora, and Divya Sharma. And there was also one more ITEL. There was no name. Okay, and we have choose for the number 2 question, which is about the 3 effective techniques that can help students to manage their one learning. So we have come up with so many points, but I will make it short and sweet. So the first and the foremost thing is being a teacher, we have to target on the interest of a student, what they want to learn. So for that, we teacher has to be skilled, resourceful, and trained and trustworthy for students so that they can trust us and trust their learning. So the first one is we have to target on the interest of learning. Then the second one, we have to assign them with the activities, because through the activities, they learn more than by reading just simply a book. So it's just not only the students, but even we teachers get to know our students more about their nature, about their way of learning, about how they like to learn. And it also increase the communication and interaction between the students and teachers, so that we teacher can decide how we have to guide them. And the next one is just not giving the assignment or any activities. We also have to take the assessment, and we have to reflect on their learning, and we must celebrate their achievement so that they get motivation, they get inspired to learn more and more, and they also get to explore their potential. And yes, that is all. Thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I think you all raised some very, very important points. And I was just taking a note on a few things that you shared about targeting interest of learning. And you mentioned trust and activities and guiding, that role of guiding your learners and reflecting and doing assessment, right? So this is so linked to what we are going to cover next. So thank you very much for sharing. If you didn't have the chance now, don't worry, because there'll be more opportunities to share your live insights by unmuting yourself. So thank you very much. So actually the second question, which was about the techniques, is something that is linked to or lead us nicely to the next part of the webinar, where we are going to introduce you to two other techniques from the ones that you already brainstormed together, which we can use to build your students' agency. Before I forget, as you said before, you have so many ideas. Please do bring them to the chat so we can gather them all together on this document. And that's something that we are going to share with the slides at the end of the webinar. So please do bring all those ideas on the chat so we can all learn from each other and actually take action on them. So coming back to the two techniques, the first one we are going to introduce is the Socratic Seminar. So I'm going to play a short video which will explain what a Socratic Seminar is and how to do one effectively. So if you bear with me, I will change my settings so you can actually listen to the video. It's only 4 minutes long. And I'm going to share with you too, if you can listen to that. Let's give it a go. I'll wait for the thumbs up that you can listen.
Socratic Seminar is a teaching strategy that promotes intellectual discussion in class and can be done in two different, though similar ways. The staple of a Socratic Seminar is that students should be arranged in a circle or oval so that visibility is increased and the traditional learning environment of the classroom is disrupted. This intentional disruption promotes the difference in learning and communication style for the duration of the lesson or class period. Typically, a Socratic Seminar is utilized following a reading or the observation of a work of art. Its purpose is to analyze the reading or work of art critically. The teacher's role in a Socratic Seminar is to provide clear and thought-provoking guiding questions that lead students to higher order thinking. These questions shouldn't review facts, but should be focused on the application of ideas, philosophies, and/or moral dilemmas to the students' own interactions, selves, goals, futures, and communities. Students participating in a Socratic Seminar do not raise their hands to speak, but signal through eye contact that they have a contribution to make. When more than one student begins speaking at once, students should quickly and respectfully resolve this minor conflict amongst themselves. Finally, as often as possible, students should reference the text or work of art as evidence to support their discussion points while participating in a Socratic Seminar. Teachers will need to front-load the structure, expectations, and purpose of a Socratic Seminar before employing this strategy, while also preparing several possible discussion prompts to use in case conversation fades at any point. One model of a Socratic Seminar places all participants in one large circle where students participate equally in a discussion. Another model places an equal number of participants in each of two concentric circles. The students in the inner circle participate in a discussion, while those in the outer circle critique their peers. In this model, each student in the outer circle should be assigned to a participant in the inner circle whom they will critique. After a set of time, the students will switch positions, therefore reversing roles. There's some important considerations for a teacher looking to employ the latter model of a Socratic Seminar that will be critical in determining its effectiveness. When in the outer circle critiquing a classmate on the inner circle, students will need a specific and very clear rubric or capture sheet to fill out in order to maintain effectiveness and professionalism of any feedback offered. It's often useful for teachers to create rubrics that streamline how feedback can be offered rather than posing open-ended questions on these forms. Students also need to be clearly instructed as to the expectations of their role when in each circle. For example, the outer circle should always remain silent and practice active listening in order to provide an authentic and accurate critique so that their assigned peer can build his or her discussion skills. Conversely, students in the inner circle should only look to respond to classmates within that circle when contributing to the discussion. Teachers would also need to decide whether or not students will meet with each other to discuss the critiques before switching places in the circles. Finally, because the second model has a lot of parts, timing is an important consideration as well. Understand that even something as simple as switching where they're sitting will take time away from discussion time. With both models of a Socratic seminar, teachers need to also consider the complexities of the social, emotional aspect of participating in an open discussion amongst peers. Teachers should openly prepare students accordingly and should develop leading and probing questions with that in mind as well. While this strategy can be an extremely rich experience for students, it should be noted that this is contingent on the amount of student engagement, which is often a direct result of the amount of preparation a teacher puts into this activity, as well as whether or not it has been a priority to build a classroom culture of safety and trust. See you later.
It doesn't matter who you are.
Amazing. So as I come back to the presentation, if you'd like to share any insights from this video, it went a little bit fast, so don't worry, we are going to recap on the main points to consider. Anything that you'd like to share? Did you know about this technique before? Is this something new for you? Have you heard about it or practiced it before? We wanted to share this technique because at Teach Man to Fish, we think this is a really effective technique to empower students to take charge in class. A group discussion format like this can help students develop and deepen their critical thinking, listening, and communication skills, all of which are really important skills which a student needs to succeed at school and later in life. So as I said before, it went a little bit fast. So let's have a look at the main ideas.
Socratic Seminar is a teaching...
It's playing again. It's playing again. It wants to go again. So just to remember what is being said on the video, the better you and your students prepare, the more they will get out of this technique. And as the teacher, plan some prompt questions to kickstart the discussion. The students should take over by asking each other their own questions, right? So you prompt them and then they take the lead on the discussion, following suit, asking each other questions. And the video also mentioned creating a rubric to help students give constructive feedback to their classmates. So here on the screen, you can see an example, and we will share more on the useful resources link that is going to come on your email with the presentation slides. A couple more things to consider. Be clear about the roles and expectations of students in the inner circle versus the outer circle. And again, it went a little bit fast, but there are differences in terms of roles and expectations. So be aware of those differences. At the same time, encourage your students to be polite and respectful, even when critiquing the students within the inner circle. And as well as getting your students to reflect on how their classmates perform in the seminar, we also really encourage you to get each student to complete a written self-reflection at the end, as this reflection can help students to carry more learning out of experience. Link it to what you share on question 2, when you mention about reflecting and self-assessment. That's why we say we'll come back to this, and this technique is bringing that all together in a way. So we suggest you work on the written reflections as well to help the assessment of your own students. So now, great, we know about the technique, but you might be wondering how you could introduce this to your classroom and when would be a good time to use a technique like this. So we are going to share an example using the topic of corporate social responsibility, which is about the commitment of companies to carry out their business in an ethical and sustainable way. I'm sure the majority of you are familiar with this CSR concept. So corporate social responsibility is a broad concept which cuts across almost everything a business does, from human rights to environment sustainability. So we believe it's a good topic for your students to get stuck into. So as the video explained before the class, you'll need to provide your students with some texts about the topic. So I'm going to share, and you'll see now on the screen, some articles which have some arguments in favor and against corporate social responsibility. So unfortunately, we won't have time today to look at them, to look at all the articles now, right? And create the debate and replicate the debate right now. But remember that we'll be sharing these presentation slides after today's session, so you can have a look at them in your own time and actually bring this activity to your lesson and play with it and see how the students react and interact between each other. So this is one example of how you can bring the technique into your reality. So if you do that, if you like to practice with the example, you will need to prepare some thought-provoking questions to kickstart the discussion. We said before, ideally you share these prompt questions. So we like them to start the discussion for them to take over and ask themselves questions. So here are some examples for this topic. The first one could be around, what does corporate social responsibility mean? And what's the opposite of it? And these sort of questions help to understand students' prior knowledge of this topic and check their comprehension of the text. Remember, we are kick-starting the conversation. We can do that by asking them, in this example, what does corporate social responsibility mean? What's the opposite of it? And then we can continue with another question. What is more important, for businesses to make a profit or be a positive force in society? And why? So on the surface, this might seem like a closed question, but there are a lot of different positions students could adopt, and then the discussion will follow. We could also ask them, what are some possible implications if businesses operate in a way which is unethical, or evidence from the text support that claim? So we like to encourage students to back up their claims or opinions with facts. And then the last one will be around how a business is accountable to. And remember, these are just examples. And these sort of open-ended questions leave students to take the discussion in different directions. They might answer the businesses are accountable to their employees, or shareholders, or customers, or the wider community. We are opening it up from the different directions to follow the discussion. So once your students are familiar and comfortable with doing a Socratic seminar in this way, you can take it to the next level by encouraging your students to read the text before the class and come up with their own discussion questions about the topic. So they have even more autonomy over what direction the discussion takes. Next level, prep in advance, and they come with their own questions. As we said before, this is just one example of how you could use the Socratic seminar technique to dive deeper into a business-related topic in a way which is led by your students. But of course, you could apply this technique to all sorts of different topics or classes. So before we move on, I would like to ask, how do you see this working with your students? And again, feel free to share your insights or thoughts in the chat, or if you like to unmute yourself and share, how do you see this technique working with your students? Going to have a look at the chat. This is like a fishbowl technique, says Sirisha. Yeah, yeah, fishbowl technique seems similar. Does anybody want to share that technique, which seems to be similar to this one? The fishbowl technique. Any volunteers who knows about this fishbowl technique? We are teach a man to fish, so we need to know anything and everything about fishes. No? Oh, I just read your comment. India is the same, is another name for it. So we are talking about the same.
Exactly. So the students in the inner circle are in the fishbowl, and the students in the outer circle are looking into the fishbowl.
Amazing. Thank you. That's what happens when you miss things, DJ in the controllers and Zoom. Thank you. Then we were talking about the same. Okay, amazing. So thinking about this topic of students owning their learning and taking an active role, we think now is a great time to tell you a little bit more about our School Enterprise Challenge, which is our award-winning experiential learning program. So the School Enterprise Challenge is all about building the students' agency, as it is the students themselves who take the lead and go on real life entrepreneurial journey, from coming up with their very own business idea to writing a business plan and actually launching the business and selling real products or services to real people. Our educational resources support you to guide your students the whole way. And I'm sure some of you are familiar already with our program, so please feel free to share your comments or experiences in the chat as well. Being part of a school business is a fantastic platform for giving young people the opportunity to take the lead in all areas of planning and running a real life business. And we won't get tired of saying this is a real business that sells real products or services to real people. So we invite you to find out more about our School Enterprise Challenge program by registering now on our website, which is on the screen. The registrations are open, so this is the moment in time when we all jump in to the website and get registered to stay taking part in the program this year. So now that we covered the first technique, we are going to introduce you to another teaching technique you can use to build your students' agency, which is called curiosity time. So I'm going to play another video which will tell you all about it. My flag is a little bit longer, but we believe with India it's so well explained and it's explained by a teacher that is worth the watch. Hopefully we'll have time today, and I think we will. Otherwise, again, everything is available for you to come back to should you like to in your own time. So I'm going to do the same as before. I'm going to make sure that I can share this and you can listen to the video. Yeah. Amazing. Thumbs up and we go.
Curiosity time is a time for students to really get a chance to dive deeper into a topic or project that we're doing in class. A chance for them to throw out questions that they maybe have always wondered or just never really had an academically driven topic to focus on.
Like those strings for the piano? Yeah.
How would you describe that question?
How do the strings get involved with the piano?
I'd like you to try to come up with as many questions related to this topic as possible. There's no question that is too off the wall, and there's also no question that's too obvious. The more questions, the better. So for 3 minutes, I'd like you to just do this individually.
The process is really helpful because for our projects, we get to answer our own questions that we're curious about, so it helps us deeper understand what we're learning about.
It gives you the opportunity to learn what you want to learn.
This is an important practice because learning needs to be a little bit of a combination of individual curiosity and a collaborative process. And when the teacher is the one that's constantly directing where the class is going, that's only one person's curiosity that's being appeased, maybe the teacher. And so including students to be part of that process not only ensures that they're more engaged and interested in what they're learning, but it also creates more of a community. kind of show students that, hey, I care about what you care about. I want to include you in this process.
It's really engaging for us as students, and we're more excited to learn about the project because it's actually coming from us, the things that we're learning about.
Asking good questions is kind of a really important skill in any career. I think one of the biggest hurdles most people have is that they're afraid to ask some of the obvious questions, and so they don't. And so this process kind of builds confidence in students in asking any type of question and giving them the confidence to explore some of the things that they may or may not have been curious about. Even if they are very simple, it still kind of brings their voice to the table, and in most careers that's an extremely important skill to have. For me, I use curiosity time at the start of a project or at the start of a new topic that we're doing, sometimes even midway. It really helps inform me what kids want to learn about. It also helps them feel like they have ownership of the learning, and it helps me plan how I want to best engage that learning or that discovery of some of their questions. So for curiosity time, in my own mind, I have a general direction of where the learning's going to go and the content. So I try to choose a prompt or an image or some kind of starting point for the students to generate their own questions about. Again, guys, questions can be clarifying questions about these statements, or they can be a little bit deeper questions related to these things. Maybe some whys and hows. I gave you some bits of information, but I didn't tell you why that information is information I gave you. So for this example, I know that we're going to be learning more details about not just frequency and sound, but how that's organized into music, especially with the musical scale. So I wanted to give them a little bit of information first about that. I also used vocabulary that I knew most kids wouldn't know to start some of the more basic questions to get the ball rolling. So we use the word like fret, octave, scale, in hopes that some would ask those general, simple questions, but then that they would hopefully then lead into more complex questions. What's really important in beginning curiosity time is allowing space for students to think individually, to have a space where they can write down their own questions, to really value their own individual thoughts. After that, I open it up more to the group so that they can hopefully build off of each other's questions, find some commonality in their own questions, which might validate their own thinking so that they become more emboldened to ask more and build off each other. And that's kind of a little bit more of a rapid fire in the questioning, really trying to encourage them to produce quantity of questions in hopes that they end up getting a little bit more out there and pushing each other in their own questions.
Why are octaves important, I guess?
What's a fret?
What's a fret?
Wait, I want to write it down.
Why does a normal piano have 88 keys? Why not like 90 or 80?
Why does a typical piano only have 88 keys?
Does it cost to produce a grand piano? How loud are each of the instruments, and what's the point of this little black area?
Rishi, what's a question that you had?
I had one that was, why are they made in the style that they are?
It's really challenging to work with groups sometimes for me personally. I've always been better at independent work, but it's a good challenge, and I know that I'll have to use that later on, but I'm getting better at it, so yeah.
To me, I feel like it's easier than individual work, but that might just because like I'm a soccer player and I'm used to playing in a team. But group work, it also just helps you understand your classmates and understand the project more because it's more ideas just coming together. Favorite part is just finding out what people think about what your question and then just trying to compare them to like others and your own.
Next, I asked them to think about the types of questions that they asked. So in this example, I was asking them to think about open or closed questions, not to pass judgment on the questions, but more so to make them think about how do we ask questions.
Open means like it has a lot of different answers and there's like a lot that you need to learn about it to like be able to answer it. And then closed is just like you can look it up and get like a one sentence answer, like yes or no.
There's a purpose for closed questions and open ones, so I just wanted them at this point in the school year to think about that, especially in a science classroom. That's the first practice in science and engineering practices, is asking questions and defining problems. So it's important to ask those open and those closed, but more so to be able to go back and forth and changing them. So I had them try to choose one open and practice changing it to a closed, and vice versa. Lastly, I had them prioritize their questions. So I basically said to the students, if they could only get one of these answered in the end of this project, which would it be? Just again, so they have a little bit of ownership in the learning, a little bit of direction of their own in the learning, and help me decide what really they're thinking about.
For our presenting, should we like pick an open one so that we can like learn about it for 2 weeks, or does it matter?
It's kind of whatever your group decides, whatever you're most curious about. If there's one thing you walk away learning by the end of the project, what will it be out of all this?
There's a lot of content that I can go over. Some of it is sidetracked, some of it's core into the actual content that they're learning about, but I want to, this is school, this is what learning is all about. It should be fun and it should be driven by them. So I want to honor their curiosity in going forward with them.
Our question is, why are there 12 notes in the Western scale?
Our question is, why are there strings on a guitar and keys on a piano?
Ours is, what would a guitar sound like if there was a square hole instead of a circle hole, and like would it change the sound?
Why do others prefer different types of music? And what happens to your brain when you listen to music?
To make this successful, I think it's really important to have a thoughtful prompt that is giving students a direction to go, not giving too much away and not making it too overwhelming. There's a real balance of sparking them to ask questions. So for example, in this instance, I used some vocab words they hadn't heard before in hopes that at the bare minimum they could ask questions like, what is an octave, what is a scale, those types of things that would hopefully lead to more. I would also say it might be a good idea to practice with a colleague or share a prompt with somebody else, especially somebody who might not be in your same subject area, and see what they come up with. I did the opposite. For this case, I shared it with an expert in my subject area to make sure all the verbiage was right, because I'm not an expert in sound and music. So this was actually a lot of questions I had myself about the topic. So that's an important thing to think about too. If you're curious about something, students might also be very curious about that. I would caution about being too general though. In the past when I did this earlier, I had a question to the students rather than a prompt, and I have found that a prompt generates more questions. So my question before was, what does it mean to be human? That produced statements, not questions. This time I gave them a statement and it produced questions. So that's another tip. I would try to think of something that would spark more questions than just statements. I did this with 8th graders. I'm sure if we went down the grades to elementary school or even younger, they would have a lot more off-the-wall questions, but that's kind of what learning is all about. It should be fun. It's funny doing this with younger students because they tend to, once they get the ball rolling and find they're in a safe space, tend to throw out a little bit more out-of-the-box questions. I think us adults are either afraid to take risks in asking questions, or we simply assume we know the answer or assume somebody else knows the answer and we can just ask them right away. But students don't do that much assuming. Once they're engaged, they kind of take the ball and really run with it and really start genuinely asking their questions they're curious about. For me as a teacher personally, again, it really just informs the direction I want to take the class. I really want to value what they had to say, and the different activities and the ways that we're going to learn in the future are going to be based on those questions. I really want them to see their questions in the next lessons that we have, whether it be in Socratic Seminar, whether it be in Genius Time, whether it be in how we approach the end products of our project. I really want them to see their questions in there.
Amazing. Hopefully you are still there. And if you'd like to share what you got out of the video. As I said before, it was a little bit longer, but it was so well explained, step by step. And we believe it covered many things that we spoke about today in terms of engagement and taking an active role and leading discussions and lessons by the students. So what did you find most interesting or exciting about it? And if you'd like to share your thoughts in the chat, we welcome your comments, your ideas. Did you know about this technique before? Have a look at the chat.
Are we allowed to speak during the session?
Of course, if you like to, yes, please do share.
Okay, I'm sorry, something is wrong with my camera. It's not working.
It's okay.
Yeah, so what we've seen is piquing students' curiosity along with collaboration. And this is really important because, you know, most Indian curriculum classes and lesson deliveries are very teacher centered. It is the teacher who's speaking at the like in front of the students, and children are just listening and they're absorbing information. So there's very less opportunity for them for group work, and then to work on a collaborative project, so which builds up communication, which also builds leadership skills, and which gets the work together. So that way, I mean, the video is really inspiring to see that the students actually need to be left as independent learners to solve problems on their own, and the teacher is actually in the role of a facilitator. So therefore, these questions, which should not just be coming from the teacher's side, but actually it is a wonderful class when we have students asking these critical thinking questions and analytical questions. So a lovely video and lovely insights from the video in that manner.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing. And I think it's about what we spoke about at the beginning of the session. It's about stepping back. It's about stepping back from that role of leading everything, but allowing your students to take that active role and own their learning and ask questions, right? Like I really like on the video what the teacher said, it's not about me asking them the question, but it's more about giving them a prompt on a form of a statement so they can come up with their own questions. So yeah, it's a shift. Yes, please. What would you like to share?
And also, you know, just while, and also like in the lesson, when the children cross question each other, like say in the plenary, when the groups are presenting and then you have other students, it is not about a critique, but asking these important questions, challenging each other, I would say, like, and a free flow of communication in the lesson where the children feel safe asking questions. I mean, it would be beautiful to see that, where children feel safe asking questions. They don't feel that judgmental aspect, or, you know, they don't want, like, you know how children are. So yeah, it's very important to create that space where the children feel belonged and responsible, ownership of learning, like somebody's written, and also feel safe asking questions, and not like, you know, step back and for the fear of being ridiculed or being laughed upon. So that way, it's very important to have those spaces in the class. Very important for the teacher to do that.
Thank you very much. I think I cannot agree more with you.
When teacher behave friendly amongst the students, the students are very easy. They easy feel and they ask the question. And a group discussion is a very good deal between the teachers and students. And it means they feel they do the teamwork and they want to do something new, something creative. When we give them some freedom to them to ask the question, to share their difficulties, then so they are doing well. They will.
Exactly. It's about, thank you for sharing. It's about exploring, right? Like allowing, I think what you shared before is key in terms of creating the space. And then it's about, the teacher said on the video, school should be fun. It's something that we come to learn and explore new things. So we need to remember that when we run our lessons, so we can allow and create that space for that to happen. The exploration of new ideas, of questions on learning new things in a non-judgmental way, as one of you were sharing before. Great, so we think this technique can be used in all sorts of ways, and we would like to link it back to what we share about our School Enterprise Challenge program. And if you or your students have never taken part in the program before, we'll invite you to try this technique when you first introduce the program to them. And again, to ignite this curiosity and questions coming up on what is a business and how do we do this and who do we sell to? Or if you're already taking part in the program, you can try this technique as well when you introduce a new or more advanced version of a business concept. For example, it could be when you talk about marketing or financial record keeping or things that are elevating the business to another level. So those are the two techniques that we wanted to share with you today. And thank you very much for sharing with us all your insights and thoughts and ideas and how you believe this can work in your classrooms. So because we are now getting towards the end of the session, we would like to pause for a moment again and ask you to reflect on what you have learned today by thinking about this question. What is one thing that you will do now with what you've learned today? One thing that you would do now with the learning from today. And you are, feel free to, I was going to say, you're welcome to share in the chat, or we might have 1 minute left if anyone would like to share live and by unmuting yourself. One thing that you will do with your learning today, what would that be? Feel free to share in the chat. We've been talking about reflection and learning. So we do believe it's important to pause for a moment, pick up on what we covered in today's session, and think about what are we going to do now with this? Curiosity time, curiosity generation, encouraging curiosity. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Applying curiosity time. It looks like it's a favorite one, curiosity. Maybe because it was really well explained, I would argue. New ideas will float in easy manner, empowering learners in the best to discover. Amazing. Thank you. So as we said at the beginning, here are some useful resources you can check out to learn more about what we discussed today. Remember, you're going to get the slides on a follow-up email, so you can always click and have a look at them. So if you're interested in learning more about the theory behind student agency, this first article explains it in a clear and simple way. And you can find tons of resources online to help you deliver a Socratic seminar, lesson plans, scoring guides, and self-reflection questions sheets, and we've included a couple of them here. There's also another great article on the most effective types of questions to ask in a Socratic seminar. Probably you can recycle them and bring them to curiosity time as well, just to transfer them across and making them transversal. And finally, another article which gives some really nice tips on how and when you are planning a session, you can identify opportunities where you can hand over decision-making power to your students. So those are the ones I will share on the slides. Stay connected with us. We always go with this one at the end. As I said before, remember, School Entrepreneur Challenge just opened the doors again in this fantastic 2021 with a new platform that I would recommend you go and explore, because we are elevating things to another level as well this year. So you're welcome to join us to the program. You have the website details, our email, website, email, I was going to say social media channels, all the different ways in which you can get in touch with us. And lastly, before we wrap up the session, as we promised, you can get your attendance certificate by filling in this short survey that we are going to be sharing in the chat now. And your feedback is very important to us to help us develop further webinars which are of interest to you. So please do fill in the survey. It will only take 5 minutes and you'll get your attendance certificate from today's session. So that might be it for today. We hope that you enjoyed today's webinar and found it useful. As we said at the beginning, this was the second webinar in our brand new series in 2021. We'll be running webinar 3 on developing empathy and understanding the needs in your community in 2 weeks' time. So that will be on Tuesday, the 29th of June at 4 p.m. British Summer Time, Thursday, 1st of July at 2 p.m. British Summer Time. So we are going to share all the links to register to the upcoming webinar on our follow-up email, and you can find them anyway on all our social media channels. So make sure to stay connected with us to stay up to date and actually join us in 2 weeks' time. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today, for sharing and bringing all your energy into the session today. And goodbye. We hope you have a lovely evening, afternoon, day, depending on where you are in the world. So thank you very much. And we look forward to welcoming you again in 2 weeks' time. Remember, on Thursday, 4 o'clock, or Tuesday, 2 o'clock in 2 weeks' time. That will be it. Thank you very much.